Welcome to Sex Help for Smart People. I'm Dr. Laura Jurgens. I'm here to help you have better sex, intimacy, and relationships. So let's get at it. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 65. So today we are talking about what we all need in order to have good sex and relationships. And this is like a big list of kind of categories of skills and understandings that really are what underlie and enable good sex and relationships. And I'm giving it to you all in this one place. It's going to be a pretty good long list broken down into some key categories. Those categories are needs and desires, emotional awareness, self-awareness, erotic knowledge, acceptance, lovability, and embodiment and boundaries. So we're going to talk about what all of those things mean, because I think sometimes we take them, and especially on a podcast, right? I have a limited amount of time. It's a moderately long, sometimes short format, but it's not as long as, a novel or a book or something. But also we need to tackle usually one thing at a time. But sometimes that keeps us from seeing the big picture. And sometimes also if we dive in too much, we can kind of lose a sense of like, what is the overall process here? What is it that we're really looking at? And where do I want to work, right? Where do I want to focus my time and energy? When it seems, I could learn all kinds of things in order to improve my sex and relationships. We talked last time about learning being okay and my trust in you all that you are interested in learning things about yourselves, learning things about how to relate to other people, learning things about your partners. I actually think all that learning is super fun. But what is it that we're trying to learn, right? And you don't need to learn everything, because in this list of stuff, there's going to be a bunch that you're already good at, that you've got nailed, you've got locked down. And then there's going to be some other things that you feel a little weak, that you could strengthen, and some that you're like, I haven't even thought about that. I really need to work on that. Or some that feel almost impossible to you, and that's because you haven't gotten the right help for them. And that makes total sense. Most of these things are not things that we ever really get taught unless we happen to get sort of the family lottery and get really lucky. If we win the family lottery and somehow our parents are also managed to be sex positive and really help us understand pleasure and boundaries and things like that, that's amazing. Good for you. You may not even be listening to this podcast, but most of us didn't get that. There is somewhere where even well-intentioned parents, because they're also a product of our society and a product of their own parents' upbringing, there's ways that parents can't compensate for everything in culture is the other thing that happens. So sometimes we have wonderful parents, but we may have really secure attachment, for example, because of that, but we still don't have a lot of information about our own pleasure. We haven't had a really good sex education. So that's why I want to give you sort of the big picture of all the things that we work on in my practice, so that if you want, and this is, look, if you are kind of like me, where you're a bit of a nerd, I am a proud, unapologetic nerd. If you are a bit of a nerd or you just really want to get good at intimacy and relationships, because that it dramatically improves your quality of life, and you want to get confident, you want to feel really capable, then what I want to invite you to do is, you can listen to this just without doing any of this the first round, but I would invite you to come back to this episode with a piece of paper and go through and really actually figure out which of these things you want to work on. Like, write down some of them that feel particularly important, and also notice the ones that you're already really good at, and then the ones that you want to kind of work on as your goals. And if you ever need help or want help, you can reach out to me, but you could also, work on some of these on your own for a little while first, if that feels best to you. Okay, so here we go. We're going to dive in. And I want to start with acceptance. So in the category of acceptance, the 4 big things we work on are self-acceptance as opposed to shame, understanding that you are wonderful and you are okay and you are allowed to accept yourself and not be ashamed. Second is accepting other people as opposed to fearing or judging them. And when we fear and judge other people, we're usually also fearing and judging ourselves, and vice versa. Another one is accepting that people have different desires and different needs that don't always match up with ours, and that that's okay. And we may need to choose what kind of relationship we want to be in with them, if any, if they don't match up. But it's okay if they don't match up too in a lot of circumstances. Another one, the last one in this category generally, is the acceptance of disappointment. That disappointment is part of life and it's a normal part of life. And we don't need everything to always be perfect in order to have a good life. But we often do benefit from being able to accept disappointment as normal. Okay. Next category is lovability, which is, there's 4 things in that one too. I would boil it down to. And that is feeling that you are able to be lovable, feeling lovable, knowing that even though you're not perfect, you're lovable, giving love, and then also receiving love. And a lot of people have a hard time with one or both of those, or even all 4. So that is another category of things that we work on in my practice and is really important to having good relationships and a good sex life. Okay, so also emotional awareness. And there's a few more in this one. Number 1 is being able to feel your feelings, being able to actually feel them in your body and identify what they are. Number 2 is knowing that your experience and your feelings are actually important, even if they are kind of made up by your worst imaginings, right? Even if they are not connected totally to reality of what is happening, it doesn't mean that your experience is not important. And knowing, that not necessarily like believing the story that your feelings are telling you. That doesn't make them unimportant, but your feelings are not a reliable source of understanding what's going on with other people and understanding truth. So being also a little skeptical of the story your feelings are telling you. Another one is knowing how to express your feelings and emotions vulnerably so that they will be most likely to be heard by another person without defensiveness, right? So being able to express yourself vulnerably, that is a really amazingly powerful skill. And it is one that I had to work on a lot and most of my clients have work on, and it really helps a lot. So another one is knowing how to listen empathetically to other people's feelings and also knowing that they don't necessarily mean anything bad about you. They're not somebody's feelings aren't something you did wrong, even if they think so. And even if you did legitimately hurt them, it's okay for them to have negative or difficult feelings and that those are not permanent and they're not necessarily your fault, right? Even if you have some responsibility there. We want to be able to listen empathetically and actually hear the other person with empathy and think. And by empathy, I mean like being able to put yourself in their shoes. That's all I mean. Imagining how it feels to feel, hurt or betrayed or some of those things when somebody's telling you that's how they feel, even if it's about you. And that is a really big skill that sounds really scary at first, but it actually can be learned and is really powerful. Okay, another one in emotional awareness is how to be thoughtful and loving with both your feelings and the feelings of others without being a people pleaser or kind of crossing your own boundaries or those kinds of things. So that sort of balance between being empathetic and caring and taking on too much and being codependent. And the last one on this list I'll say is not imagining that logistics are the same thing as feelings or that thoughts are the same thing as feelings. So being able to discern the difference between feelings and logistical problems or opinions or judgments. So those are all really key skills in emotional awareness. And you can reflect on how you feel about your level on those without any shame, right? It's okay to be where we're at. It's absolutely okay. In fact, it's necessary. We have to be where we're at. So we might as well not feel bad about it. All right. Another one is needs and desires. So I'm going to use needs and wants kind of in exchangeably. That is an area where people can argue about things really easily. And I think you can just get stuck in the weeds with that. And it's really more of a distraction than useful. So, a want versus a need, we can argue about it, but I'm just going to lump them kind of together. So one is to really feel in your body that it is okay for you to have needs and desires. That is something that not all of us have. I didn't always have that. A lot of people don't have it. It's okay if you don't, but it is something you can learn to know that it's absolutely okay. Not just in your head, but like in the practice of your life where you don't do things like I used to do, like try to drive myself to the hospital when I've like had a serious injury and stuff like that. It's okay to ask for help. Falls into this category. All right, another one on this list, knowing what you want. And just knowing what you want is actually a skill that takes some time to develop for a lot of us. All right, another one, knowing that your desires, including your sexual desires, are okay no matter what. The desire itself is okay to have. Even if it's like illegal or unethical, it's okay that you have the desire. Where we get into moral problems is when we act on a desire non-consensually or with a non-consenting adult, right? But the desire itself is not a problem. It's okay to have a desire. And the more we shame ourselves about our desires, the less we're actually able to find creative and fun ways to play with our desires with other consenting adults. So it's very much useful to know it's okay for you to have your own desires. All right, another one here is to know that you can have your desires met or accepted in different ways that actually do honor consent and boundaries of society in which we live. So that means it's a little bit different than just knowing that it's okay to have your desires, is actually knowing that you can have your desires met or accepted by others in consensual ways that are ethical within the boundaries of our societies. It is very rare that your desire can't be met at all if you can be kind of open and flexible about how that looks. All right, another one here is to be able to ask for your needs and desires to be met. Remembering, of course, right, that other skill that we all have to accept disappointment in this life sometimes, but knowing that it's actually okay to ask. And then the last one in this category is knowing and understanding that sometimes your needs will be met and sometimes they won't. Sometimes your desires and needs will be met, but sometimes they won't. And we can all understand these, pretty much everything I'm telling you today, intellectually. Most of us understand them to be like good things and useful and, oh yeah, we kind of agree with that or whatever. It's very different to know it in your head and be able to say, oh yeah, that sounds like a good plan, right? Than to actually be living it and feeling it in your body. Many of us have a disconnect with what we think in our head. Oh, it's okay, to ask for my needs to be met. Yeah, sure. I agree with that. But then when it comes down to actual practice, we're not actually doing it. So what I'm talking about is, are you actually doing these things? And that includes, that knowledge that sometimes the needs will be met, sometimes they won't. So we can all agree on that intellectually, but do you feel like it's actually okay when it happens, when one of your needs isn't met? Is it like, okay, here's one of those times where I need to feel my feelings and move through my disappointment and allow this to just be part of like the other side, the 50-50 of life, that sometimes it's disappointing and hard and my needs aren't always met? Or does it become a crisis? and somebody's, not doing what they quote unquote are supposed to, according to your mind. All right. Another category is both embodiment and boundaries, and they really do go together. So being able to be in your body and feel the sensations of your emotional experience, that is embodiment. To feel alive in your body, to be connected to your emotions as they happen, to feel them as sensations in your body, that is really feeling life. And it is amazing. It is amazing. I know as somebody who was not embodied before and who had to learn that from the ground up. Another part of this is to know that your body is yours. It is not somebody else's. Nobody else is entitled to it. Nobody else is entitled to having access to it without your interest and pleasure and explicit enthusiastic consent. Your body is yours. It is not there to be in service of somebody else. All right, another one here is knowing, like embodied knowing in your body that it is okay for you to have boundaries. This includes being able to actually say no to people and feeling like, maybe it's challenging sometimes, but you can hold yourself through that and you actually know that it's okay for you. It doesn't cause a panic and it doesn't feel impossible. So knowing it's okay to have boundaries is one, but actually knowing what your boundaries are is another one. And that's separate because we can oftentimes have trouble with both. Maybe we don't actually know in our body. We know in our head it's okay to have boundaries, but we might not know in our body that it's okay to have boundaries and actually live our lives that way as if it's okay to have boundaries. But we also just might not know what ours are. And sometimes that's just normal. Like, right, if it's a new thing and you have never experienced it before, you might not realize that you have a boundary about it. That's different. And you might become aware because of that experience. But if it's something that happens regularly and you don't realize that you have a boundary about it, that it's not okay with you. This is like the classic example is obligation sex. So somebody can know intellectually that it's okay to have boundaries, but not actually realize that they've been crossing their own boundaries by having sex with a partner when they didn't want to because they were afraid of something. Usually the partner feeling bad or afraid of not fulfilling their quote unquote duty or afraid of rejection emotionally, right? So they're crossing their own boundaries and they didn't even necessarily know that they had one. So knowing our own boundaries is important. Another one in this category is being able to express boundaries kindly, clearly, and lovingly. This is so powerful. I love working with people on this. I love working with people on all these things, to be honest. It's just so wonderful. It's why I love my job. But this is a really, so transformative when people realize that they can not only have them, and they know what they are, but they can express them lovingly and clearly, and it's okay. And we practice that a lot with me in a low stakes setting so that it becomes easier with people where you have a lot of investment in the relationship. All right, so check to see for you if you feel like you're actually good at kindly expressing your boundaries, and that means following through. That means not just saying you're not supposed to do this thing. That means a boundary is what you do, not what somebody else does. So if you don't want to, have somebody yell at you, it's what you do. Are you expressing, hey, I'm not here for this and I'm going to leave? And then you're actually leaving. That's a boundary. All right. Last one in this is to know that in your body, to know in an embodied way that boundaries are not always perfect. They're an imperfect science. They're places where we always have growth, and that you never have to feel ashamed if you're not 100% perfect at it. And if you have to kind of come back after the fact and repair with someone in a relationship, some sort of boundary crossing. All right. Another one, and the last sort of category here, is self-awareness. And this is knowing everyone has relational wounds. Everybody does. None of us walk through this world without them. And knowing that everyone has protective strategies to avoid being wounded in the same way again, right? That awareness that we all have protective strategies. And I mean this awareness embodied so that you can feel it when you receive a protective strategy and you can identify it. Knowing that we all get hurt, angry, and fearful at people sometimes. So like often call that activated. We get activated. A lot of people use the word triggered. We get triggered. We all get activated, hurt, angry, fearful sometimes, including you. So the question is, do you have awareness of that and self-acceptance around it? And then also knowing that growth and relief around those hot spots, around those really tender wounds, the things that activate or trigger you, is absolutely possible. It's also incremental, and you will never be done with it. You will never wind up being perfect. Sorry to break it to you. And that's okay. We can all still love you, even if you're not perfect. In fact, it makes you much more relatable as a human being to be imperfect. So thank you very much for that. But just knowing that you will never be done with having those activation spots, but you can manage them and you can grow in ways where you can figure out how to be less reactive and also care for yourself when you do get really upset. And then the last one here, and I put it in self-awareness, is being able to combine all of these things, the lovability, the self-acceptance, the emotional awareness, the embodied boundaries, the needs and desires, being able to actually kind of alchemize all of that in order to show up authentically in a relationship repair conversation so that you can actually listen empathetically with someone and you can vulnerably speak your feelings. So those were a couple of our skills, right? But this is like kind of putting it all together with enough self-awareness to kind of be on to yourself when it's not a good time for repair and when it is a good time. So try to like stay centered enough in your own self-love that you can receive whatever challenge somebody is bringing to you and be able to work through it with that person. So that's a big list, right? That's a big list, but these are just categories of emotional skills, and those really underlie intimacy. And they all then feed into, the last sort of category of skills for good sex and relationships is just erotic knowledge. And so that is just, the things under that category are knowing that pleasure is a valid pursuit, knowing that like you are allowed to have pleasure in this life, right? Feeling entitled to that's okay. Another one is being able to give and receive pleasure. Another one is being sensitive to your own erotic needs and the needs of others erotically. Having sensual skills to give pleasure and learn about different partners' desires. Be able to ask for and teach your partners what you need sexually. And knowing that there's so many different ways to be sexual that you can really populate a creative long menu with different options that work for you and your partner if you have one, or if you want one, or if you want to just be having an erotic experience with yourself. So those erotic knowledge things are all built, like they work best when they're on a foundation of all of these other intimacy skills, the emotional intimacy skills, the self-awareness, the self-acceptance, the understanding of boundaries and embodiment and needs and desires. Then you add all of the erotic knowledge and skills onto that, and it's magic, right? Then everything works really, really well. And when you have challenges, because you will inevitably still have challenges and disappointments, you have the skills to work through it. And that's what we do. That's what we do in my practice, and I love it. And while I know this seems like a lot, I don't want you to feel like you need to know how to do all this stuff right away, or it's just like a beautiful landscape to look at exploring, right? It's like the world is your oyster. The world is available for you to explore in the sort of, geographic sense. And then this is sort of the landscape of relationships and eroticism that you can also explore. When we go on a vacation, we don't go to, everywhere all at once, right? So this is kind of a choose your own adventure and really but an opportunity to take a step back and look at the big picture and say, okay, where would I really like to focus? What are the things that feel like, gosh, I hadn't even thought about that, or that feels really hard, or I really don't know how to do that? And where are the places that I actually feel like I'm really solid, that I can celebrate that with myself and my partner, if I have one, and our partners, if you have multiple, and just really enjoy that you have those strengths already and use them to build new ones on top of. So that's my hope for you, that you will think about it that way and look at it as kind of a 30,000-foot view of the kinds of things that we are doing here in this podcast. And you will keep getting support from me around. So I will see you here next week.
Hey, if you're curious about how you could have better sex and connections, go grab my free guide, Find Your Secret Turn-Ons. It's right on my website, www.laurajurgens.com, and the link is in the show notes. I'll see you here next time.